Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2020 Chevy Traverse, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster Base Plate Kit with the removable arms. So before we start actually talking about the base plate and checking it out, I figured it would be good just to kind of touch base and refresh ourselves on what's actually going to be needed to flat tow our Traverse down the road behind the motorhome. So why don't we go ahead and cover that now. The very first thing that you're going to need is the base plate. That's going to provide us with a solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook a tow bar up. A tow bar is going to be the physical link that connects the front of your Chevy to the back of your motorhome. The third main component are going to be safety cables, and those are there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. Those are going to keep your Chevy connected to your coach. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring, and that wiring is going to transfer the lighting functions from the back of your RV to the back of your Traverse, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main component is going to be a braking system. What the braking system is going to do is apply the brakes in your SUV whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, helping to bring you to a more complete and predictable stop. This is what your base plate is going to look like whenever you're not using it. So whenever you're kind of just cruising around town, and we see a lot of base plate and flat tow setups here in the shop. And I will say this is definitely one of the cleaner ones, out there. These Traverses look really good. They kind of have a really stylish and kind of an aggressive front end. And so if it were me, I want a base plate to be huge and noticeable and kind of take away from the looks. And this one, does a great job. I don't think it could blend in much better. It's tucked in real tight here in the corner, and kind of just blends in. You really aren't going to notice it unless you're, looking pretty hard. So that's always nice, but at the same time, it's going to be easy to get to. I do like as well that they give you some brackets if you're going to be using wiring, permanent type wiring. In our case, our customer has magnetic lights, so not utilizing that bracket, but if you do plan on having some wiring set up, gives you a perfect spot to mount it. No guesswork really involved at all. And the same holds true for your braking system breakaway switch. There's a bracket on the base plate for that as well, and kind of gives you that perfect spot and keeps everything symmetrical and organized. Whenever you are ready to use a base plate, you're going to have the removable arms. And the way these work is you're just going to place them inside of the base plate, rotate them about a quarter turn until they lock into position. It's going to be the same setup for the one on the other side too. So the way the removable arms are going to work is when you have your tow bar, it'll line up with the holes there. You'll put a pin through and then a keeper pin, and that'll keep everything connected together. So this base plate is going to be compatible with most Roadmaster tow bars. And it can also work with other manufacturers' tow bars as well by using an adapter. And you can find that adapter here at eTrailer if that's your particular situation. When it comes down to it, base plate you really can't go wrong with, It looks really good and it's super easy to use. It's really well built. I'm actually a big fan of Roadmaster base plates. They just work, they fit together like they should. And seeing that and getting it in your hands, it'll give you the confidence that you need whenever you're pulling your vehicle behind your motorhome. Now, as far as the installation goes, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit involved. It's definitely not the hardest one I've done, nor the easiest, kind of falls somewhere in the middle. So it will take a little bit of time, but as long as you stay focused, it really shouldn't give you too many issues. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're gonna be here at the front of our vehicle, and you're gonna wanna pop the hood. We need to remove the fascia, that way we can get our base plate on. So the first thing that we're gonna do is remove this plastic radiator cover. On each side of it, we're gonna have a total of 6 push pin type fasteners that we need to remove. With these, you can take a trim tool or a flathead screwdriver, just kind of work the head of it out, get underneath the base and pull it out. So I'll go ahead and do this to get the 6 on this side removed, as well as the 6 on the other side removed as well. Once you get that last one pulled out, you can grab the plastic cover, lift it up, and set it to the side. With that cover out of the way, if you look along this edge, we're going to have a total of 6 7mm screws. So we'll grab our socket and pull all those out. Now if we move to our front wheel wells, what you want to do is kind of turn your tires in, give you some more room to work, because along this edge we're going to have 5 T15 Torx bit screws that we're going to remove. And I want to mention, from this point on, anything we do to one side of the vehicle, we're also going to do to the other side, because it'll be set up the same way. We are going to need to kind of pop this wheel well trim piece off, and so what I've done is just kind of use some painter's tape around everything. That way we don't accidentally scratch anything up. But the way to get this piece off here, first thing you're going to do is kind of get your wheel well liner pulled back, kind of separated. I'll just kind of tuck this behind the tire if I can, that way it stays out of our way. And what I found with these, if you kind of give them a good shake, kind of try to help loosen everything up. With these ones, you can use a tool like this, a plastic tool. Get underneath the bottom. Kind of try to pry up. Sometimes these can be really tight. If that don't come out right away, just continue to kind of pull. And there it went. This popped right out. And we're going to pop it out up until about this point. You want to get it past where the fender meets the quarter panel there. If you look kind of inside here, and the area where the fascia meets the quarter panel, you can see we're going to have a 7mm head screw, and we're going to need to remove that. Underneath the front of our vehicle, on each side of it, you can see where the fender liner kind of comes forward. We need to free it and release it from the fascia. So there's going to be 2 T15 Torx bit screws. In the center of our vehicle, you can see right here, this part of the fascia kind of starts to shoot towards the back of our vehicle, and it's going to be attached to the subframe. So there's going to be 4 T15 Torx bit screws. I'll go ahead and get those removed. Now, with an extra set of hands, we can actually remove our fascia. So what you want to do is start at the corner, and this one actually essentially just kind of came right off. A lot of times these are tight though, and you'll have to kind of pull pretty hard, and you'll hear them kind of pop off there. So we're just going to work our way around. To get up to the top here, you'd have to kind of lift up. And you don't want to pull too far back just yet. We may have some wiring to disconnect. And it actually looks like, in our case over here on the passenger side, we do have some wiring. So that connector there, what you're going to do is kind of push on that red tab. There's going to be a gray lever you can kind of swing back, and it's going to separate. This other connector here, you can push down on the tab as well, separate it. And if that plastic fastener is hard to get out, you can get a trim tool or a screwdriver behind there and kind of pry that out, like so. Looks like the gray connector is going to kind of have a similar setup there. Get behind it, get it pried out. And now with everything free, we can set our fascia off to the side somewhere safe. If we look on the end of our bumper beam here, we're gonna have this air deflector. We're gonna remove this 7mm screw from the top of it, and that will kind of loosen it up. And what we need to do, if you go right there in that corner, that seam, you need to cut it off. We're going to do this on each side of our vehicle. That way this is not going to interfere with our base plate. Just over here on the driver's side, we are going to need to remove our washer fluid reservoir for the time being. That way we get the base plate on. And so we need to disconnect everything. First thing we'll do is just kind of pry the harness off of the bottle itself. So once that is free, we can then disconnect the plugs going to it. This one's gonna have a red tab you can pull out on. There's a tab, push down on the center. This blue one here looks to be a little different. It actually looks as if maybe we'll have to kind of pry up on that clip. That will release it. And we're gonna have one more down here, this black one. This one looks to be oriented the same as the blue one. We'll just pry up on it. Gonna get this wiring out of the way. Now we need to disconnect the lines. So, what we'll do here, we'll try not to make a big mess. You can pull this out, and what I'm gonna do, I just grabbed a bolt, and whenever I pull this out, I'm gonna put the bolt in there, and that should stop the fluid from coming out. Let's get that plugged up. We'll do the same deal with this one down here. Back up top here, we're gonna have a nut that we need to remove. That way we can start to loosen up our washer reservoir. So it's gonna be right down in there. It's a 10mm. Go ahead and pull that off. And if we move back down on the side where we disconnected the lines, we're gonna have a couple more fasteners as well. And once those are removed, we should be able to kind of maneuver our washer fluid reservoir down and out, and we'll just set it to the side for the time being. Now we can grab our base plate and use it as a template. That way we can make some holes in our frame. That way we can actually bolt it up. The sides are specific, so make sure you have the correct one. We're over here on the driver's side. And what's gonna happen is this hole here is gonna line up with this factory one there in the bottom of our frame. And so what you wanna do is hold it up in place. You wanna push it up tight against the frame. I'm gonna take a marker and use a base plate as a template there. Put some marks, that way we can drill these out in the correct spot. Now that we have our marks made, we can come back with our drill bit and create all those openings. Now that we have our holes drilled out, we're going to first work on these two here. Just to kind of explain what's going on, how this is going to work. You're going to have a handle nut like this. It's going to have two nuts on it. And this is gonna be held in place kind of behind the pinch weld there, and you can see those nuts are gonna line up with the holes that we drilled. And so what's gonna happen, we take our base plate, it's gonna sit over it like that and line up. And what you're gonna do is take these bolts, we're gonna place on a split lock washer and take some red Loctite, put it on the threads. All of the hardware that we're going to use to secure the base plate is going to receive some of this red Loctite, and you can pick it up here at eTrailer if you don't have any. We'll get that set down. We'll take the base plate, make sure it's lined up. Put our bolts through. That'll kind of make it easier to hold in place. Take the handle nut, like we talked about, and just try to line it up and hold it in place. To get our bolts through. You may have to do, you know, one at a time here and then kind of just work this into place. These handle nuts can be a little tricky sometimes, so just be patient with them. Once we get them started though, we're gonna run them down hand tight. Now we can work on these attachment points. And we're gonna start from the back and work our way towards the front. These are gonna be a little tricky. There's not a ton of room to work with. For these two, you're going to use these handle nuts, a 1/2 inch bolt, 1/2 inch split lock washer. What I like to do with these before I even bother to put them in, just run that bolt through there, make sure it goes in nice and easy. Sometimes the paint on these can kind of get in the threads and, you know, jam it up, make it kind of tricky. Get some Loctite going here. And the way these are going to work is you're going to take it and feed it through this hole here in our bumper. So you'll run it back, and then what I like to do, it's going to be really tricky to see, but what I like to do is kind of look from the bottom and line my handle nut up that way. So, you know, if you take a peek through the hole there, you should be able to see the threads kind of start to line up, and that'll usually get you going pretty close. If it's kind of bent a little bit and it's tricky to get started, to get the bolt started at least, one thing you can do to kind of help is take a screwdriver or something like that and just kind of try to bend it into shape a little bit. Once you do get it started, just get it hand tight. For this hole here, same concept as these two. Hardware is going to be a little different. You're going to use this bolt, you're going to put on a split lock washer, and then the flat washer. Same deal with the handle nut. This is just going to be the size to match this bolt. So get it bent into position and do the same thing. With everything in place and hand tight, come back, snug it down. For our 3 smaller bolts, we're going to be using a 14mm socket. For the 2 larger ones, we're going to use a 19. Now we need to come back and torque all the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. You want to do the larger 1/2 inch bolts first, and then the smaller 3/8 ones after that. Once everything's torqued, the handle portions here, if they haven't come off already, you can remove them. You can usually bend them around, get them to break, pry on them, or you can just simply cut them with a pair of snips. So once you have the other side of your base plate completely installed, you're going to take the center section. That's going to line up the holes in the base plate. You're going to take a bolt, Loctite, and a flat washer. Pop that through. I'm just going to put one on the other side as well to kind of help hold this up. Then on the back side, where that bolt's going to come through, you're going to put on a split lock washer and a nut. It's pretty tight back here, so just be patient, take your time. And for the bottom attachment points, we're going to use that same hardware combination. With all the hardware in place, we'll come back and tighten and torque them. At this point, go ahead, take our washer fluid reservoir, slide that back into position, and simply just re-secure it the opposite way that we removed it. At this point, it'd be a great time to install some of your other flat toe components, such as wiring or a braking system. And I say that because with the fascia removed, you're going to have all this extra space to work, and it's usually just a lot easier to get to and work around. With that said, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And once I'm done with that, we can come back and reinstall the fascia. If you're not going to be installing those components, I already have them in place. You'd simply refer to your instructions. You are going to have to trim the fascia a little bit, and then you'd simply reinstall it in reverse order. Now we can trim out our fascia. So there is a template and the instructions that you can cut out, and I trace that. For the most part, it's a perfect circle. There's going to be a little square portion over here. So I think what I'm going to do is just take a hole saw to cut that circle portion out, and then we can come back and just kind of snip this area here. That said, you know, be careful doing this. Make sure you don't have any wires or anything behind there that you can accidentally hit, which I checked already. We're all clear. With that said, we'll get this cut out. Sometimes with plastic, it's actually easier to run the bit in reverse to kind of get it going a little bit. If you put it forward, it really just digs in, so just something to think about trying. For this squared off section, I'm just going to use a Dremel tool to get that material removed. With our fascia trimmed, we can now simply get it reinstalled. I do want to mention, once you get the fascia on, it's really tight by cutting out that template. Just not a whole lot of room there. So just to make it easier to operate and get the fascia back on, I did trim out a little bit more. You know, you can use a utility knife or whatever you have really to kind of get in there and just remove a little bit of that material. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Base Plate Kit with the removable arms on our 2020 Chevrolet Traverse.